What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and it is Tuesday. At least you can tell from the calendar as of me recording this. Also, look at that subscriber number. You guys are awesome. Continue to drive that up. I'd appreciate it. But being Tuesday, that means it's time for another Top 10 video. As we've been going through all of the classes in D&D 5th Edition with updated Top 10 lists for magic items, this week we're talking about the Top 10 magic items for one of my personal favorite classes, the Cleric. So if you want to see what those are, stay tuned. So as always, let's talk about the specifics. Now, I realize some of you may have already heard this, and feel free to look in the description as well as the chapters along the bottom. You can just skip ahead if you've already heard this bit, because it's pretty much going to be the same for all of these videos. So what are the parameters for what we're considering a magic item for a cleric? One, it has to be an official magic item, something published by Wizards of the Coast in some format. This is not a homebrew. This is not something found in the DM's Guild or from some other third-party agency. This is published by WotC either in a PDF from an official source of theirs or, contained and bound in a physical book or, again, officially released under the WotC banner on D&D Beyond. We are not covering legendary magic items or artifacts or greater. It's up to very rare quality is what we're covering in here. So only things that fit in that, in that area will be covered in this. So again, no legendaries. Also no consumables because, again, consumables are kind of a funky thing because you can have a legendary consumable, but then it's gone. So no potions, no scrolls, no sort of magic items that have a finite number of charges that when they're used, they're gone forever, like a Chime of Opening, for example. Those are not going to be included in here as well. And lastly, we're also not including anything that is like permanently useful for everybody, like the books and the tomes that raise one of your ability scores by 2. They're all useful, and if you have the time frame and the length to do it, and you can use these multiple times throughout the course of your character's life if your DM lets that happen. So those will be excluded as well. Oh, and one last thing that I kind of have said recently, but I do want to instill here. I'm trying to avoid magic items that are specifically useful for a subclass, right? So there's obviously a large number of different cleric subclasses here. So some might have proficiency with martial weapons, some might have proficiency with heavy armor. I want to try to give you things that are generally applicable to a cleric, not ones that are like, hey, if you happen to be this type of cleric, this item is useful for you. No, these will be applicable and useful for all clerics, regardless of what subclass you take. And even again, if you choose to play a subclass that's third party, these will still be useful to you. Number 10. The Sentinel Shield. This uncommon magic item that's non-attuned comes to us from the DMG. And this is just an exceptionally useful shield for anybody, but clerics more often than not will be a one-handed weapon and a shield class, especially if you happen to be a cleric that doesn't have access to heavy armor. That extra boost to AC would be appreciated. And this is something that, again, even if you're not even using the shield, is generally beneficial to you. So while holding this shield, so you have to be holding it to consider that, but you have advantage on initiative rolls, which could be huge for you, right, depending on where you want to be in the initiative order, and wisdom perception checks. So it functions like a regular shield, so giving you a +2 to AC. Advantage on initiative, especially if you're playing with the playtest rules and possibly take the new version of Alert that allows you to swap your initiative order with somebody else. That could be interesting. And again, the advantage on perception checks all the time. Now, remind you, it's not a specific instance, not perception checks that rely on sight or hearing. It's all the time. And a constant source of advantage on a check provides you a +5 bonus to the passive of that. So this shield not only gives you advantage on initiative, the benefits of a shield, advantage on your active perception checks, but it also gives you a +5 to passive perception checks. Number 9. The Guardian Emblem. This comes to us from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It is an uncommon attunement magic item that can only be attuned to by a cleric or a paladin. And given the fact that WotC has reverted even on their playtest as far as the way critical hits go, this now is a useful magic item again. Again, assuming things continue to stay the same. But as an action, you can attach this emblem to a suit of armor or shield. And it has 3 charges. When you or a creature you can see within 30 feet of you suffers a critical hit while you are wearing said item, you can use your reaction to expend a charge to turn that critical hit into a normal hit. This is pretty nice. It kind of gives you some of the benefits of being a grave cleric without being a grave cleric. It also allows you to fulfill the role, again, of the sort of support character if you want to. But this could also be useful if you're a damage-dealing cleric. The ability to pop out something to make somebody not take a huge amount of damage from a huge hit. Turn a critical into a normal hit is beneficial. It can, again, it says when you or a creature, so you can use it for self-preservation to save yourself or to save your allies. It's 3 uses over the course of a long rest, which isn't bad. You get them all back daily at dawn. And again, clerics don't typically, in the course of their spells, again, opportunity attacks and other things notwithstanding, don't have a lot of reaction use in the game as it stands. So this is a nice way to have a reliable use for your reaction if a critical hit happens to come up. So again, I think it's a really great item. I like this kind of concept. And again, you can get this sort of additional survivability without having to play a Grave Cleric if you don't want to. Number 8. I'll admit this is a little bit of an odd choice, but this has kind of grown on me over time. The Helm of Teleportation. This attunement magic item comes to us from the base rules, and it's a pretty simple item, right? It has 3 charges. While wearing it, you can use an action to expend one of the charges to cast the teleport spell. You get a D3 charges back daily at dawn. There's no downside to expending all 3 charges if need be, and it functions, again, like the teleport spell, which, again, lets you transfer people over a very large distance. Clerics don't typically have access to this kind of large movement magic like this. Some of them may get access to Teleportation Circle as like a domain spell, depending on the cleric you are. But the ability to cast teleport like this is huge, and again, it fits into that sort of. I think this, you could obviously theme this. This is kind of a samurai themed helmet, the official art, but there's no reason this couldn't be more divine based, tied to a specific god, maybe tied to a god of travel or something like that. I don't know. It's just, like I said, it's an oddball pick, and the more I think about this item, this could also be a great DM tool, regardless of if you're giving it to the cleric or not. But dropping a Helm of Teleportation into your party could potentially be an amazing thing or a horrible thing for a DM, right? It'll allow your party essentially fast travel through various locations, which is good. Unless you don't want that, then obviously don't put it in the game. But you also have to realize that while your intention may be, my party can have this, then the cleric now can teleport them to get from one city to the other city. And you're like, that's so cool. Saves down on travel time and saves on work for me. That's good. But then you might think like that's all you're thinking about. But then when they get into combat, and then if somebody decides like, well, we're going to leave this combat and you didn't plan for that, now you have to deal with the fact that this big epic battle that your party was losing in, and you were trying to figure out how you were going to rework things to happen, they just teleport themselves out and they're gone. Number 7. The Staff of Thunder and Lightning. Now, realistically, any sort of staff or wand that will give you more offensive capability as a cleric is useful. Now, again, certain cleric domains have access to more offensive magics, but in general, you have a couple of damaging spells throughout your various spellcasting levels, but you don't have a lot of big boom AoE spells. There are some, but not a lot. So something that will allow you to do that consistently would be a great option. Even something like a Wand of Fireball or Wand of Lightning Bolt would be useful. I like the Staff of Thunder and Lightning. It is a very rare magic item. It is attunement. It comes to us from the basic rules. But it provides you with a lot of options, and I think that that's useful. And again, all just extra gravy if you happen to be playing a Tempest Cleric. So first of all, it's a +2 quarterstaff. This means you can use this. Remember, you don't need to wield a quarterstaff two-handed. You can wield this with a one-handed with a shield, perhaps the Sentinel shield from earlier on. And right there, that's very useful to you, as having a decent melee weapon as a cleric is never a bad idea. You don't know if you're going to be mixing it up in melee or not. So when you hit somebody with it, you can use one of the properties, right? It has multiple properties. Once you use that specific property, it's gone until the next day. So you can, if you hit, connect, add 2d6 lightning damage if you want. Again, it's when you hit, so you could potentially use this for when you crit to allow you to do 4d6 lightning damage. You could also use the Thunder ability, cause the staff to emit a crack of thunder, audible out to 300 feet. When you hit, the target you hit must succeed on a DC 17 con save or become stunned until the end of your next turn. Stun is, just ask any DM who's played with a monk in their party. Stunned is a super powerful condition, and being able to dole that out kind of at will is pretty nice. Lightning Strike, use an action to cause a lightning bolt to leap from the tip of the staff. 5 feet wide, 120 feet long. This is essentially the lightning bolt spell, although it does 96 damage, so a little bit more. It is a DC 17 dex save, so the downside of all of these are if you potentially have a way to boost your own spellcast save, your own spell save DC beyond 17, then this won't be as useful as your own spellcasting, but especially if you get one early on or you just don't have the stats, this could be pretty useful. So again, access to Lightning Bolt, something clerics don't typically have access to. You also have Thunderclap. Use an action to cause a staff to issue a deafening Thunderclap out to 600 feet. Each creature within the 60 feet, not including you, must make a con save of DC 17. On a failure, they're going to take 2d6 thunder damage and be deafened for a minute. Again, that does hurt allies, so be careful of that. And then Thunder and Lightning. You can use an action to cause Lightning Strike and Thunderclap properties to happen at the same time. Doing so doesn't expend the daily uses of those properties, only this one. So you could use Lightning, Thunder, Lightning Strike, Thunderclap, and Thunder and Lightning all over the course of one day and still have a +2 quarterstaff. I think it's pretty useful. I like the versatility of giving you the different options to fit the scenario. Again, like I said, something like a Wand of Fireballs or a Wand of Lightning Bolt would be great too, but I think this just provides you a lot of options. I also feel like in my soul it should give you resistance to Thunder and Lightning damage, but maybe that's a little too much of pushing you into legendary territory.
Number 6.
Surprising nobody, the Staff of Healing. Again, you are playing a cleric. A lot of people will auto-typecast you as the healer, but that doesn't necessarily have to be true. But even if you are more of a damage-dealing cleric, having a Staff of Healing in your back pocket is never a bad thing, allowing you to potentially not prepare healing spells, but still have access to some pretty potent utility and healing options. So this is an attunement magic item. It is rare, typically only attunable by a bard, cleric, or druid from the basic rules. It has 10 charges. You can expend a charge to cast a variety of spells from it, one of those being Cure Wounds, where you can upcast for each additional charge up to level 4, Lesser Restoration for 2 charges, or a Mass Cure Wounds for 5. Now, this does have the standard rules of if you roll a 1, you have to roll again, expend the last charge, roll a d20. If you roll a 1, it's gone forever. It does get a d6 plus 4 expended charges daily back at dawn. So you can potentially use 9 charges every day, try to get some back, and potentially never risk losing it. But I guess if you're in a really tough spot and need that extra Mass Cure Wounds for 5 charges, you could essentially use that twice back to back to just get a whole bunch of mass healing without potentially having to prepare it, or just use this to supplement the healing that that your character already has.
Number 5.
Mizzium Armor. If you are playing in a game that your DM lets you use materials and things like this, again, happens to be contained from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, which this does work on any medium or heavy armor that's not made out of hide, which means most clerics will be able to use this, as all clerics are proficient with, at the very least, medium armor. This is the best magical material out there. One a lot of people will think about is adamantine, which has the benefit of a critical hit against you becomes a normal hit. Now, adamantine is pretty powerful because it is an uncommon non-attunement magic item that gives you that. Mizzium is a rare non-attunement magic item that gives you that and then some. So you still get while wearing this armor, any critical hit against you becomes a normal hit. However, you also get, in addition, when you're subjected to a magical effect that allows you to make a strength or con save to take only half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed on a saving throw. So this is kind of like a lesser version of evasion, kind of similar to the original 3/5 evasion, but for strength and con saves as opposed to dexterity. So again, if you have to make a strength or con saving throw and you happen to succeed, you will take no damage from whatever that is. And this could be, I love to think about the crazy concept of somehow getting yourself access to evasion, but then also having Mizzium Armor to get like the crazy concepts of all of those combined together. I don't know. I think this is one of the best magical materials you can do if you're able to get a version of armor like this. So I very much have included Mizzium as a standard armor material in all of my games.
Number 4.
The Devotee's Censer from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This is a rare weapon and happens to be a flail. You can kind of see it right above my head here. Attunement by a cleric or paladin. First of all, it counts as it's a holy symbol for you, which is nice. So you've got that benefit of the weapon being the holy symbol. When you hit with this flail, it does an extra d8 radiant damage. So again, flails do a standard d8. This does an extra d8 radiant damage, so now you're at 2d8 damage per swing. And if that wasn't enough, it also has the benefit of preventing a pretty potent heal as a bonus action. So it causes sort of, as you can see, the sort of mists coming out of the Censer head to extend into a cloud 10 feet around you in a 10-foot radius for a minute. And at the start of each of your turns, any other creature contained within that 10-foot area gets a d4 hit points, and that's only usable once until the next dawn. Now, I will remind you that this does not distinguish between enemy and ally. It will heal enemies as well. So that's a thing to consider, but it is only when they're standing within 10 feet of you at the start of your turns. So there's the potential where you could hit somebody with this thing on your turn, use a bonus action to activate the healing, and then move away from them, possibly, so that you're only next to your allies at the start of your turn, or potentially just use it as an out-of-combat heal, which is a pretty potent 10d4 healing if you use this out of combat that could save people a lot of uses of potions. If you don't have time for a short rest, this can all be done in the course of a minute, things of that nature. And then again, if you have some other way to boost up your healing in some way, this could also be even more powerful. And I think flails are a really awesome weapon, and the fact that it takes like a religious symbol like a censer and turns it into a weapon, I think is just that much cooler and more thematic.
Number 3.
Necklace of Prayer Beads. These are one of my own personal favorite magic items, one that I got very early on in one of my first 5th edition campaigns, so they do hold a little nostalgia for me, but I do think they have some pretty awesome options depending on what you roll. So these are a rare magic item that comes to us, I think, from the base rules, or these are Player's Handbook. Base rules. Dungeon Master's Guide, I meant. But they come from the base rules. They are attunement by a Cleric, Druid, or Paladin specifically, but you get a d4 plus 2 magic beads. Now, in the ideal situation, you roll very high on this, potentially getting yourself access to the 6 beads, and then you roll individually to see which one of the beads is on there, or possibly the DM just picks and tells you. But you can see that basically these beads allow you to cast a variety of spells. They don't use up any spell slots that you might have. They are cast specifically from the bead, and they use whatever your spell save DC is. So if you have ways to increase it, things like that, or using your ability score to possibly add to things, it's all based on your own. The other thing that's pretty unique about it is it says, let's see, each bead contains a spell that you can cast from it as a bonus action. So that also is interesting because it turns a lot of spells that are not bonus actions into bonus actions. So for example, Bless, which we all know is an action to cast, we can, if we roll a 1 to 6 on our bead generation roll, we get a Bless, standard Bless in every aspect, except instead of casting it as an action, it is a bonus action, which is nice because you could bless yourself to give yourself a bonus to the attack roll and then attack with your action. We get a Cure Wounds of 2nd level, so that's 2d8 plus the associated ability score modifier, in this case, Wisdom, which again, we can do that Cure Wounds as a bonus action. Same thing with Lesser Restoration. It's either one, so the way I've read it is that if you get the Curing Bead, you can choose when you use the bead, if you're going to do the Cure Wounds of 2nd level or Lesser Restoration, you get the opportunity to pick one or the other. 13 to 16, we get Greater Restoration, which is also wonderful because these also don't require the material components necessary. I believe it states that. Let's see. Each bead contains a spell that you can cast from it. Once a bead's, you can't cast it until the next dawn. So however many beads you have, you can use that ability to cast it once per day, essentially, because it comes back on a, let's say, from the next dawn, you get your castings back. So Greater Restoration, again, Greater Restoration is an action. This turns it into a bonus action. Branding Smite is already a bonus action, so this is just kind of like a freebie thing. You're possibly getting it access to a spell you wouldn't normally have. Now, Planar Ally is a big one, because Planar Ally is a 10-minute casting time. Excuse me, it turns that 10-minute casting time with Planar Ally into a bonus action. And then lastly, a Windwalk spell, which also has a casting time of a minute, which Windwalk is a really good spell to move people a large distance if you don't have something like a teleportation. It's also not a decent get-out-of-jail-free card if you can cast it and then get it on the party so you can exit a battle. Now, normally this would be a problem. I think we even saw this happen in one of the critical roles where someone cast Windwalk and then forgot that it was a 1-minute casting time, not a 1-action casting time. However, with the Necklace of Prayer Beads, that becomes a bonus action, allowing you potentially yourself and up to 10 other creatures to turn into these wind spirits to basically fly away very quickly or use it to traverse distance over land. And again, there's also, I think for the most part, with almost all of these, I wouldn't be upset if I got multiple of the same bead, because that's not uncommon either. You roll 2 sevens or something, and you get 2 Cure Wounds beads, which again allows you to use the beads to get bonus action heals to allow you to get that extra benefit out there and possibly reserve your spells that you prepare each day for something else.
Number 2.
The Candle of Invocation. Now, this very rare attunement magic item comes to us from the base rules, and it is tunable by anybody, but it's really mostly beneficial if a cleric or a druid were to use it. So, first of all, the candle has a specific alignment situation. Alignment doesn't really play too much of a role in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons outside of some very specific things, like, for instance, this candle that we're talking about here. Right, so it says the GM chooses the god and associated alignment to be determined from the candle. Again, I feel like if we do get these reprinted in a future, whatever the 1D&D version of this is, the alignment possibly will get removed, because I feel like these are just holdovers from previous edition. Alignment is kind of a throwaway thing, and it's basically, I feel like it still exists in 5th edition because it's legacy. But either way, the candle's magic is activated when the candle is lit as an action. It burns for up to 4 hours before it is destroyed. So it technically, I guess, sort of falls into the consumable section. But I feel like 4 hours when you can use this 1 minute at a time, could potentially be an entire campaign. You could use this probably almost every combat for an entire campaign, and it may not ever get burned up. So while the candle is lit, and basically because you use it in one increment at a time. So potentially if you only were to use this thing in combat, that's what, 240 10-round combats you could use this thing in. Again, compare this to something like a Chime of Opening, which is like 5 uses, but whatever. The candle sheds dim light in a 30-foot radius. Any creature within that light whose alignment matches that of the candle makes attack rolls, saving throws, and ability checks at advantage. Obviously, this is beneficial if your party is either a good or neutral aligned party, and the enemies are not. This could be beneficial. So again, folks whose alignment matches it get the advantage on attack rolls, saving throws, and ability checks. In addition, a cleric or druid in the light whose alignment matches the candle can cast first level spells they have prepared without expending any spell slots, though the spell's effect is as they're cast with a first level spell. So not only does it give possibly a huge boon of advantage on a bunch of different I guess the new term would be the D20 tests, if your alignment matches the candle, but also if you're a cleric or a druid, you can basically cast unlimited first level spells with the candle being lit, which could be, again, obviously useful for healing. I can't even think of all the options you could do with a first level spell. Bless, all of the cure wounds that you could think of. Potentially even just unlimited guiding bolts, really, if you wanted, as long as you cast it only at first level. And then also, if you light the candle for the first time, when you do, you can use it to cast the Gate spell, destroying the candle. Gate being, what is it, a 9th level spell? Yeah, so you have that opportunity too. I feel like most people are not going to use it for the Gate ability, but keep in mind that that is an opportunity that if you do give this and provide this to a player who doesn't use it immediately, they could use it to cast Gate, which could provide all sorts of sweeping either benefits or detriments to you as the DM in your campaign.
Number 1.
And lastly, we have the Amulet of the Devout. That is a varied attunement based on what level it is from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. We have 3 variations: uncommon, rare, and very rare, with an associated +1, +2, or +3 based on whatever the respective rarity is. So while you wear this holy symbol, you gain a bonus to spell attack rolls and saving throw DCs of your spells. This is huge because clerics don't typically have a lot of ways outside of specific possible multi-classing options or even specific subclass choices to boost up their the way they cast their spells and to augment them to make them stronger. So as such, even an uncommon Amulet of the Devout is going to provide you a +1 to spell attack rolls. Now, you don't have too many spell attack rolls as a cleric. I think it's primarily reserved for Guiding Bolt based on, except for maybe subclass choices. But also the +1 to the save DCs. And as a cleric, you do have a lot of really awesome options. I mean, even if you just stick with the most common, very powerful spell of Spirit Guardians, a +1 to your saving throws to have folks take the full damage from Spirit Guardians is pretty awesome. But again, if your DM lets you get up to a very rare version of this, it's a +3 to that saving throw. Again, not just for this, but for all cleric spells. And that, as someone who is a full caster, that would be a very beneficial thing for you to have. Again, this does also work for paladins, but we're talking about clerics right now. In addition to that, while you wear this amulet, you can use your Channel Divinity feature without expending one of its features, once until the next dawn. So essentially, this is going to add you one additional use of your Channel Divinity. Reminder that Channel Divinity normally comes back on a short rest, so you could possibly use your Channel Divinity, use it once using this feature, even if you only had access to one, and then get it back on a short rest, although this ability to do so would only be once per long rest, gaining it back at the next dawn. That's pretty awesome, and again, we don't know how the sweeping changes of what clerics and paladins and things will look like when the 1D&D version of them comes, but this will be pretty useful. I do think we'll see a heavier focus on Channel Divinity in that. And again, this is, I'd say the primary benefit is the bonus to the saving throws, spell save DC of your spells. But if you happen to have a cleric subclass that has a very useful Channel Divinity, you'll get even more use out of this magic item. So anyway, folks, that is my top 10 magic items for clerics updated for 2022. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Did I miss anything? Are there magic items? Have you gotten any of these as a cleric in your game? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you think I totally screwed up this list? I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for continuing to support me and the channel. I will see you all next time.